there's a lot, and you hear all these things about, the BRICS nations and all this stuff, and it's like, yeah, but there was troops like 100 kilometers from Moscow. Do we really want like Russia and these countries controlling the reserve currency? But
Yeah.
beyond the reserve currency question, just in general, the stuff that's going on geopolitically, primarily the Russia Ukraine stuff, how does that factor in different possible scenarios in terms of the equities world and the investing world?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny, right? Like this past weekend, everybody became a coup expert on
Right.
Twitter, right? With what was happening. Um, Look, obviously, what's going on is still horrible. I think that from a geopolitical front, the risk remains that there's further disruptions in food, right? So
Yep.
you've got a drought, which has pushed up the prices of corn, soybeans, kind of all the stuff that everyone worried about last year. They fell off, and now they're coming back. Then on top of that, you never know, how Russia Ukraine ends up playing out from an agriculture standpoint. Um, to some extent, I think the market is numb to it, right? Meaning it's like it sounds callous and cold to say it, but the market doesn't really care unless it affects, in a shocking way, commodity prices, right? And by the way, it's not unusual. I mean, markets don't necessarily have to go down because of wars. I mean, we know this historically. But geopolitical risks are still very real, right? I mean, and it's only real if it affects sort of the possibility of us getting pulled into a war, at least short term. But I don't know how you necessarily trade off of that. I know a lot of people like to talk about geopolitical risk, and yeah, it's like if you're going to play it, then play it from the food commodity agribusiness type of standpoint. The futures directly, because that's probably where there's the most right tail risk for a spike in price because of something that surprises on the Russia Ukraine front. But I don't know. I think to your point about the reserve currency status, unless you have some other country having better legal frameworks than we do in the States, which is ultimately why we have a reserve currency, right? It's property law, right? The strength of that is why we have a reserve currency. It's that and military. Until you have some player that can sustainably have legal authority that abides by some code or some book as opposed to what some dictator says, U.S. is always going to be the reserve currency country.
Yeah, I mean, like it's if you think about it, we've got the personal property rights, the legal system, the largest economy, we've got the largest military. People want to hype China, but we're still like we spend more than the rest of the world combined on our military. They always get a budget increase. We've got we're the largest energy producer in the world. It's hard to see pivoting to these other countries that don't check even a few of those boxes. We're like one of the biggest agriculture powers too. So I like that. It's a fun narrative to talk about. I don't see it as a short term thing. I think maybe long term, but it would have to be serious changes that would happen. Back to the
And by the way, real
yeah,
quick on that, it is funny. Like to your point about it being fun, like everyone likes to rag on the death of the dollar, primarily when you're in the U.S. Like I never hear it really from
yeah,
people outside the U.S. Right? Because they know what it's like outside the U.S. But then it's like people have this really interesting dynamic in the way they think about things. They tend to be negative and bearish on macro. Just in general, people tend to tilt because they want to be negative because they see what's on the news and the political front. But then they're very bullish on their individual stocks. It's like you can't have it both ways,
yeah, yeah,
right? You can't say the reserve currency is going to hell, the U.S. is going to hell, but man, I love that Nvidia. Like,
yeah,
really?
right, right. No, that's a good one. But back to like I don't follow the defense industry at all, but I mean, it seems like there's just an incredible amount of like ammo and bombs and tanks and all this stuff that's been used up. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the numbers, it's crazy. I mean, you follow the defense stocks, equities, any of that stuff at all? I mean, it seems like they've got to replace all this stuff at some point. I mean, is that a play at all? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
maybe.
follow it.
I had looked at there's an ETF. I forget the ticker off the top of my head and it looked like it was starting to show some outperformance life kind of in the defense and aerospace area. The ammunition side, I'm sure there's always opportunities for that with
Yeah.
ammunition, right? It's like paranoia has a funny way of increasing demand for bullets.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the entire damn world is getting more and more paranoid because of all the stimuli around us, from the TikToks of the world to the mainstream media, right? So yeah, there's probably some interesting opportunities there. I don't know.